Good morning.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
You're the chair for this one, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I'm here for any of your technical needs. If you need anything, let me know.
We will be sharing screen because one of us, Jackie, are you going to share? Do you want to share screen?
Sure, I can share.
So then you probably need to make her co-host or something.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I was actually just about to ask. So thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, is there anything that I can do? Would you prefer questions at the end, during the presentation? How would you like me to handle that?
We did put a Q&A slide at the very end.
Okay,
So maybe if they're posting questions in the chat, maybe at the end, like we'll just say that we'll do Q&A at the end.
okay.
And if they and then if you do see some, I guess you can just like maybe call attention to those questions at the end, if that's okay.
I can jot down the ones that seem most on what you guys have been talking about. And then if people want to add more at the end, however you would like me
Perfect.
to handle it, I'm here to make things for you.
Thank you. Hey, Shanetia.
Hey, how's
Okay.
everybody?
Good. How are you?
Good. Josie, how do you say your last name?
It's Bustos.
Bustos. That's what I thought.
Bustos. Yeah. Bustos Pelayo. Yeah.
Okay. Silly. I was like,
I know people always want to say Bustos, and I'm like, no. But that's what it looks like.
yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah.
So am I right in that it'll be 40 minutes for the presentation and 10 minutes for questions?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. My little bit is like a minute long. Not even. Because I'm just going to say, voices, here's the article, read it.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect.
like, thank y'all for doing this too. Now that
And Shanetia, do you want to say that all at the beginning or at the end before Q&A?
whichever one you want me to do it, I can.
Jackie, what do you think?
What do you think?
Whatever is totally fine.
Okay.
Maybe start with it then. And
All right.
Yeah.
I can do that. I couldn't figure out where to be.
That's
I think so. I hope this background's okay because I'm downstairs.
It's great.
This is where I usually am.
is mine is I use the thing like the picture. Is that too much? Should I take it off?
It looks great.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
Okay.
My
I'm like,
computer
if you want to
told
see the medal, it's right there.
Excellent.
It's giving you kind of a halo.
Okay, that's awesome. I need a halo.
You are an angel.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll be flying soon, actually.
I was like, where are you going? Going on a trip?
Yeah, I'm leaving to Mexico to see my dad.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Be spending I'd like I told my students, fun fact, this will be the first time I ever spend Father's Day with my dad in my whole life.
Wow.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm thankful.
Absolutely.
Hi, everyone. I think I can hear now. I was having a little
Hey.
trouble.
Oh, look at your awesome background. That's your
know.
classroom.
That's my classroom. Yes.
That looks great.
Oh, dude, that's so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like this is all the Jane Addams books for the last 6 years, all the books we've read. So I have them there and teachers come in and kind of grab whatever they want.
Whoa, that is so
That's great.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's exciting. It's like I love them all. They're like all my babies, but I love giving them away more. I know they're getting in kids' hands. Just so you know, Shanisha, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I have to hop off at 2.
Okay.
I hope that's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Jenice, how do you say your whole last name?
Jenice Mateo-Toledo.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, like Holy Toledo. Or Toledo, Ohio, or Toledo, Spain.
I do love those those 3 letters behind your name.
I am so
I'm
excited. This is the first time the 3 letters are behind my name in a presentation. It's really exciting. I should take a picture of it, right? Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm gonna take a picture of it if that's okay with y'all.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, there we all are.
And
You know what?
send that to your family.
Okay, it's 1:30. Shall I get started or
Lovely.
have us
Sure.
get started?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. For those of you that are all joining, my name is Bert Kramer. I am the chair, the keeper of time, and partially the voice of the chat and presentation related questions. I know the presenters have said they have a slide at the end for question and answer time. And I'm just want to remind people that this session is being recorded, and please make sure that your mics are muted as we go through this so we can listen to what sounds just from the beginning to be a phenomenal presentation. I'm so incredibly excited for this. So with that, without further ado, here we go.
Okay, I'll start. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Shanetia Clark, and I'm an associate professor at Salisbury University. And I'm presenting, well, I'm really not really presenting. 3 of my favorite people in the world are doing a presentation about the Jane Addams Book Award, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But we all serve on this committee, and it's been such a joy for me personally and professionally. But my 3 friends who are presenting today are Jackie Arnold, who's from the University of Dayton, Jenice Mateo-Toledo, the new doctor. Just got the Columbia University, and Josie Bustos from California State University at Fresno. I asked these 3 folks to present today because I am on the new editorial board for the NCTE journal Voices from the Middle. And thank you. And our new volume year, which starts in September, centers around design thinking. And the tenets of design thinking deals with empathy, navigating ambiguity, being flexible, ideating based on feedback from other stakeholders. So as we know, as we think about who we are as teachers and all that goes into teaching and learning, we have to be empathetic. We have to navigate ambiguity and be flexible, and then how to respond to feedback from our students, from our colleagues, and from parents. But the first issue deals with developing empathy. And the Jane Addams Book Award centers around empathy and advocacy. So without further ado, I'm gonna have them share everything with that. And their first article that is based off of this presentation will be out for the September issue of Voices from the Middle. Mark it down, subscribe to the journal, because what they have written for this piece, for this issue, is really, really outstanding. And I can't wait for the whole world to read their words. So there we go.
Okay.
Sorry, struggled to advance the slide there.
There we go. Okay, so welcome. My name is Jenice, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Jane Addams Book Award itself. So it did begin in 1953, and you can, if you check out the website, you'll be able to see all of the books that have won the award over the many, many years of this book award. And we recognize children's books of literary and aesthetic excellence that really engage students in talking about peace, social justice, global community, and equity for all. So it's a really great resource for kind of finding those books that talk about empathy and advocacy, not only for themselves, but for others. And then we have criteria, which is the next slide. And some of the criteria that the books need to meet. Now, just to be total transparency, the book doesn't have to meet every single piece of criteria, but it does have to meet most of it for the most part. So we're talking about, so when we're meeting, we're talking about how in the book, how people can work with compassion and empathy and activism. How can people of all racial identities and gender identities come together to work peaceably and equitably? We also want to think about how children can break out of their cycles of fear, right? And how they can respond to these ideas of injustice. We also talk about how children can have conversations about addressing problems, about oppression, and all those isms that kind of, you know, are out there and that children really should be talking about, and they're smart enough to have these conversations. I know there's this idea that there's a fear that children are not ready to have these conversations. They absolutely are, and the research shows that they are absolutely ready to have the conversations. We also think about how the children can build respect for and understanding for differences, you know, which is kind of the goal of books, right? For the most part, with Rudine Sims Bishops and her windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. And kind of, you know, there is research that shows that children become a little less racist, I guess is kind of how it's discussed, if you kind of see different people. And if you don't see them around you, if you live in a community where it's not very diverse, you can certainly see people through books. And in seeing people through books, it kind of helps you it normalizes what's quote unquote different. And how, of course, how can people work for equity and equality for women throughout the world? So that's kind of the criteria. So whenever we read a book, we're looking at this criteria and saying, you know, which pieces of this criteria are met. And over the years, I've been on the committee for 6 years, the criteria has kind of expanded, and Jackie and Josie and Shanetia have been really instrumental in kind of expanding that definition as well. So I really appreciate working with them.
If you haven't had a chance to see yet, we have a number of finalists and winners that are part of our Jane Addams process. Super excited that our winners for this year are We Are Water Protectors, that won our picture book category criteria, and A Wish in the Dark, which won our middle grade novel criteria. And we're also going to be talking today about When Stars Are Scattered and Land of the Cranes that were finalists for our award this year.
So I'm Josie, but I am so excited to talk about this particular book, A Wish in the Dark, which was one of our finalists, and then it became our winner. So I had you know, distance learning all year long, as I'm sure all of you experience such exciting, you know, I don't know, expectations and all of that. But this year, I actually was in distance learning the entire year. And so I had 42 fifth and sixth graders, a combo class. And I started off the year, you know, just trying to figure everything out. But I really quickly realized that I needed good books. Like I was thinking, what am I going to do to engage these students? And of course, being on the committee, I had tons of great, all the finalists, but I thought, I'm gonna read A Wish in the Dark. And the kids were on the edge of their seats. I mean, every day it'd be like the morning, like, are we reading the book? Are we reading the book? And I'd get to the end of the chapter and they'd beg me for more, like, read another one, read another one. And they were just so excited. But there were so, and you saw the criteria just a couple minutes ago. And one time my student asked me, Maestra, how is it that you know, like, what book to pick? Like, how do you know what's a good book? And I said, bam, I'm gonna show you guys the criteria. So I pull up the criteria, and as I went through every single one, I was able to, and they were able to help me talk about how this book actually connected with every single one. And the one that they, you know, really blew their mind was in talking about point of view and talking about the two main characters, which you see right on the front, is Bong and Nok. And I haven't even told you the most exciting part. Christina Sunthorn-Vaught actually came to our Zoom meeting. I mean, the kids were like ready to like throw up, and like they were just besides themselves. And there was one little girl who I said, you're going to be the ambassador and you're going to, you know, welcome Christina. And she was just like, oh my God. Like she was like hyperventilating. Like I was all just, you know, calm down. Everybody's like, just take deep breaths. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And she just was so wonderful. And Christina was so down to earth. Like she stayed with us a whole hour and answered every single question that the kids had. And one of them was really about this, like I said, with Nok and Bong. She started off with the main character Bong like really being the main character, but as she was starting to write the book, Nok, who is, you know, the opposing character, really, like she said that she felt like Nok just needed to be as important as Bong, because they really are like the dark and the light, and like I mean, I don't even want to give it away, but I mean, eventually it's like just the way that the book flows and goes. Like you have to read it, by the way. Summer, like you guys will get through it real quick too. But the kids like had so many questions, and she made them feel so important. Like at one point, there's this part where one of the characters takes this mandarin and she squeezes it and she smells it, and then I think like several people talk about the smell of it. And I was in my head, I was thinking like, oh yeah, okay. And one of my students was like, I want to know what that means. What does that mean? Like he was like really stuck on that question. So when Christina came and he asked her, she was like, oh my God, you are the first person who's ever asked that question. And that's like the best question. And I mean, he just, can you imagine the growth? Like his head was like, and she says, you know, it's about hope, is what she said, that the smell of that, you know, was hope. And anyway, but they loved her, you know, and when we found out that she got the Newbery as well, like the kids were just like, are we like really lucky that she came to our class? And I'm all, yeah. You don't even know, like you guys don't even know. And they just felt really like, especially because she answered every single question. The other really cool thing was that the way that I started the book actually was right after Dr. King's birthday, because we talked about, we read Letter to Birmingham, from Birmingham, and we talked about how, you know, like how some law, just because it's a law doesn't mean that it's fair, right? Because he talks about that in the letter. And so when we were talking about A Wish in the Dark, we made those connections, and how just because, you know, he was in jail didn't make him bad and evil, you know, and whereas Nok had this completely other perspective. And so this just carries through the whole novel. And then when we read other things, we always connected it back. I mean, it really was like, you know, more than a touchstone text, like just like this pivotal, like almost pillar of our classroom. And you know what? And I held on, those students hung on to the very, very end. So, okay, I think I'm going to stop now, but that's how exciting really this book is. Anyway.
Josie, you don't have to stop. It's so exciting to hear. You know, all the books that we're talking about today really revolve around empathy, and back to what Shanetia was talking about, how we really help students with mindfulness. And I'm so grateful that you had those experiences with your students, because it clearly illustrates back to what Jenice said in the beginning. Kids are capable. Kids can have these really important conversations, and we shouldn't and can't avoid them. You lived that with your students in this beautiful book. The slide, by the way, is literally taken from the Jane Addams website. We're going to share all those resources with you at the end. So when it says further resources, just so you know, that's a link that's on the Jane Addams website, which will take you to all other kinds of examples and ideas of ways in which you might use the book in your classroom, should you want to have an experience like Josie's. I can't promise you can get Christina, but you never know. So absolutely give it a try. You never know. Yeah, she's lovely. So We Are Water Protectors is one of our other books that was the winner, as I mentioned before, the Jane Addams Award this year. And again, back to what we're talking about today in terms of books of empathy, for the piece that's in Voices from the Middle, this book, right, is completely aligned with that mission and that focus. We Are Water Protectors, the story of environmental justice, where a young woman is leading her community to stand against the Alaskan pipeline coming through their community. So beautifully done, really communicating how we as a community can stand together to make a difference in our world, and how even the youngest people can make a difference and be those water protectors, or be those people that stand in solidarity with their community to help make a difference in all the right ways. Friends, what else should we
Yeah.
say here?
Jackie, I was just gonna intervene and say that one of the things I did with this book as well was I paired it with an article about the pipeline.
Mhm.
You know, but before I paired it, at first I was sort of trying to see, like, do they have any background knowledge about this? Because we're in California. I mean, I have background knowledge, but that doesn't mean the kids do, right? And so it was kind of like, what does this page make you think of? What does this one page make you think of? And they didn't know. And so it wasn't until I brought out that article and kind of just like had them explore the ideas, and then they were able to make the connection.
Yeah, Josie, I did the same thing with my class. This book, I did it. I used it last semester, and I'm using it this summer. And it's the one that say, "Oh, Clark, you have to use this next semester," because in that class, because teacher ed, majority of them are women who are in the class or identify as women, and looking at even the cover of how she's standing,
Mhm.
shoulders back, up, So I say, like, think about it as women, like we stand and take up your space, like say that you belong here, and just think of how you're empowered. And then as we go through the text, and it just knocks their socks off when they see just the layers of the illustrations and of the stories. But we also watched some videos and did some background knowledge of the Standing Rock Pipeline protest and demonstrations. And then once they have that, it just takes it just up. And I have undergrads, but I love every single page of this book. And they say, "Clark, don't hype it." And I say, "I'm not trying to hype it." But then when they look at it, they go, "Oh, you're right." So I'm so excited that this was our winner last year. So yeah.
And you know what else I was going to say is a lot of people that are in upper grade tend to think that they don't have to use picture books. But like I said, I taught 5th and 6th grade. So, I mean, I think it's still like they love the pictures, right, Shanetia? Like,
My gosh, yeah. Like the one with the pipeline as the snake, that gets them. And then the one where she's you see her back, and you see this y'all can see me doing it, but anyway, the snake is the fangs are looking at her from across the horizon. Oh, I think you can pull it up, Josie. Thank you. And they go, "Oh my gosh," that made them stop and and take a breath. But then later on, when you see her going out this way, holding the feather and just marching on, that one just for me stopped me in my tracks. But then and then that's one of the ones that they just all just stopped. But the one this last class, there's an illustration of where the pipeline is going through the water. It's like a dark blue page, and she noticed a skeleton around in there. I'm pointing to my screen, but they can see me pointing to her screen. But I was like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even notice that initially." And she's like, "Yeah, you see how it's going through the sacred burial ground." And she just "Oh my God," she didn't even realize how big that was, but it made her stop and take notice. And then we had a really big discussion around it. But it's a book that you have to go back to and look at over and over again, because then you see new things and discover new things. But that illustration that Josie's showing right now was just, that's when we feel girl power. And here we are, here we roar, charge. That aspect is we can make a difference if we just own it and, you know, and demand and take our space to do that. So.
Can I just add one thing as well about this book? Because obviously we love this book, that it takes place today. How many books of Native American characters are of happening right now, and kids can kind of see the connection clearly, because most of the conversations that happen around around the Native American community is in the past. So, you know, things that happened 100 years ago. But this provides an opportunity to have conversations with children that they are still here, that they are still fighting as stewards of the land and the water, and, you know, for all of us. So that was another piece, just to add to the book.
And I'll add, as everyone has talked about, that the strong woman character in here for our committee was so important, and it really has become a focus of our committee currently. Not that we're not also looking for books that include strong males, but we're constantly making sure that that female presentation is included in as many books as we can, so that we can continue to really advocate and support those strong women characters for children to see in what they read. We do love this book. Are we okay if I move forward to the next one?
Yes.
Because we could talk about it for a very long time. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Land of the Cranes. Do you want me to talk about Land of the Cranes? Jenice, do you want to talk about Land of the Cranes?
Well, I know this is Josie's book. I know she's a fan of it.
No, Denise, but go ahead. You want to start?
Well, I haven't taught this book with my class, but what I really love about it, and I have shared it with some of my colleagues, and particularly fifth grade, is that it talks about the issues that are happening again today, with at the Mexican border, and children being put in cages. And what's really interesting about this book is that it's done in a way that's accessible to children. It's written in like poetry, free verse form, and that kind of takes away a little bit of the, of the sting, but at the same time, it doesn't shy away from the novel, from what's really happening in the world as well. So that's something that I really appreciate about the book. Yes. And what I also like is that children who have a little bit of difficulty, maybe having reading, right, on lower reading levels, this is a good opportunity for them to see kind of this thick book. And when they get through it, you know, they feel really good about that. So just something to think about with The Land of the Cranes. It's a great book as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when we talked about mirrors and windows, I think that's the reason why this book just, you know, spoke so much to me, is that I have personal experience with some of this story, and so it's, you know, just always exciting to read books where I feel like I can really connect. And so I want to make sure that I have those kinds of books in my classroom, because I know there are students that are in similar situations, and they probably, this would be a mirror for them as well. But of course we need mirrors and we need windows. The other thing is that I thought was really great, and I love poetry, and kids they always say, oh, poetry, like they always do that. And so I think this one is really, really neat, because she's really empowered by Juan Felipe Herrera. Like, remember that, like just the fact that Juan Felipe Herrera is talked about in here. And so she does these things called, oh gosh, I cannot remember what they're called, but they're like picture poems or something like that. And that's really like, that becomes therapy for her. And so during, again, this time of COVID, I felt like, you know, I couldn't get kids to like want to write big essays, but I could definitely have them, you know, do poetry and all kinds, you know. It didn't have to be picture poetry like Betita did, but just that idea of don't even worry about the grammar, you know, just write. So yeah.
And in terms of text complexity, I think what everyone is talking about here, I'll just hit this one more time. This is a tough book. It is easy to navigate in terms of readability, and yet the topic and the content is tough. And so when teachers are looking for those complex texts to use with their students that are still, that they can still navigate, and yet really are on that advanced level, this is a perfect example. And again, I'm from Ohio. My students, unfortunately, do not have the experiences. And so to have that kind of window into this young girl's world, this is such an important book for them to really gain empathy and understanding and experience what young people right now today, back to Shanice's point, are experiencing. This is a beautiful, beautiful book to choose for your class. When Stars Are Scattered is another book that we chose to talk about in terms of empathy and really kind of getting that window into someone's world. This graphic novel is so beautifully well done. And again, you can see National Book finalists. Josie has that there to show the graphic novel. And the audiobook to this is so well done as well. So just again, to throw out in terms of that text complexity, if you have students who need different kinds of accessible ways into text, audiobook is an excellent example. These two brothers are navigating their life in a Kenyan refugee camp. The one brother does have medical and learning needs, and the older brother is really struggling with trying to have his own life, and yet all of the responsibility and love that he has for his younger brother, navigating that and through a refugee camp. Students, there are so many ways and so many opportunities to have conversations with students about what that experience might be like and how we can have empathy for those who need all kinds of different levels of support. This is a beautiful book for teachers to choose. Anything
especially because when you think of this one as definitely a window, I mean, I don't have any students per se that have been to a refugee camp. And so when I started this book with them, and I was able to get it through like Libby or something so that I could actually be able to turn the pages and the kids could actually see it on their screen. They were hooked. I mean, because they were just like, I can't believe that people have these experiences. Like, I can't believe that people are living like this. And just in terms of water, for example, like when it talks about water every morning, you know, with a bucket, and I'm like, guys, where do we get water from? You know, just like that alone, you know, that's how it starts, but also really great.
Yeah, my undergrads, again, read it last semester, reading it this summer, and this is one of the books from last semester that said, Clark, add this to your list for next year. Because they loved it, and the whole is all a window. And it's like, can you imagine that on a moment's notice, you see a war that kills your daddy, and your mom says, go, with just the clothes on your back, and you have to take your brother. I was like, imagine that, and you're a child, and you have to depend on everyone who's around you, and then you hope to see your mom again. I'm not gonna like spoil the whole story, but it was, and so when they paused and sat for a minute with that, they were like, oh, wow. You know, so I was like, the whole sliding glass door, like, can you step into that world? And then, you know, how they do the mark of time, you know, when they got there, the school was just underneath a tree. And then later the school was this massive compound. I think, so like, think of how honored, like how privileged we are that you can go to school all the way through. So the conversations that we had about like water, as like some places still have dirty water, you know, how thankful we are for that. And this really just trying to like step into a world of like how urgent, like they had to just go without any kind of question. So it really just gave them this a moment just to be thankful, you know, for where we are, and then we can go to school and, you know, as you said, have water that we can just turn on the faucet and not worry about it.
Yes,
Yeah,
and I just want to acknowledge, I'm sorry.
No,
Shanetia.
that was it. That was
No,
what Jenice had written on the chat. So yeah.
okay, no, I also wanted to acknowledge Janine's comment. Yes, this book is perfect for L's because it has the visuals that provide that language support that students need. So I just wanted to say, yes, I would absolutely use. Oh, did I just say all of that in silence?
Almost. You were a little bit into it, and then it went mute. I don't know why.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying that it is a wonderful resource for English language learners who need that the visuals for the language support.
Yeah. And I like
Most
that Denise
definitely.
brought up the point about the younger brother who has a disability, um, and that whole dynamic. Yeah, it was. I just thought this was really well done. And if you go on teachingbooks.net, you'll hear an interview with Omar Mohammed and
Victoria.
almost like an update. I'll put it in the chat that of where they are now, and just some of the other conversations that they've had. He and Victoria Jameson have had around this book. But like we play, as Jackie mentioned about the audiobook. The audiobook is lovely, so well done, really authentic voices. And then if you have the physical book with the audio going on at the same time, again, it just adds another little layer to it. But I love this book. I like it.
I'm going to chime in one more time. The other thing I was thinking as all of you are talking is, again, with our emergent bilinguals, if you do have students that do have maybe not the exact same experience, but maybe they do have like at least immigrant experience, and maybe they're not quite at par with like, you know, standards as far as writing large essays, you can definitely invite them to write their own graphic novel, right? And also with and yeah, that's what I wanted to add, because the students really do gravitate. And Shanetia, thank you for bringing that up with the videos, because my students needed to see that almost like in the middle of it to make sure that like he was okay and that his brother was okay, even though like you're like, well, he is one of the authors, so he did end up going to school, you know, but it's that they do get kind of anxious, you know, if you're talking about these really difficult topics. And yeah.
We hope that we have, if you haven't heard of the Jane Addams, we hope we've sold you on the Jane Addams Awards, and that we encourage you to go to the Jane Addams website, which we're going to give you at the end. Know that on the website, there's an entire area that's devoted to social justice, learn and do, so that books from the previous years are listed there with ideas of things that you can do in your own classrooms and with your students to engage them in the kinds of conversations that we've been talking about today. To really back to, again, Jenice's point in the beginning, students are capable, students are ready, students are powerful to bring books into their hands, to start having those conversations, and then to have the next part of the conversation. So what can you do? I really feel like that is so important to who we are as educators, to not only bring the books to them, to engage in the conversation, and then take the next step with, and what can we do to help our communities? What can we do to help our world? That is a focus of our committee, is that we're finding those that navigate and instigate those conversations so that students can then think about how they might be empowered and what they might do for our world. We need them desperately. Our world needs them desperately. And so we want to get them ready to be able to do those kinds of things. So please consider following the Jane Addams information. We have a variety of content that's out there. We have our Facebook page, we have an Instagram, we have a Twitter, and then there's the link to the website where you will find all of the current award winners, all of the previous award winners, the learn and do, social justice activities, other articles that you might read around the topics that we've talked about today. It is truly full of information and content that teachers can use in their classrooms and with their students. And I think that brings us to the question and answer, that we would love to engage in talking with you about anything you'd like to talk about.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Couple of things I put on the chat, the teachingbooks.net, like that link. Your school library might have a subscription to it. If you're connected with the university, your university should have it. I think check with your public library. Your public library might have it as well. But yeah, either way, use like your school email address with it. So if you aren't able to see anything, maybe that's why. But
I just wanted to say thanks. This was a really great and helpful presentation. Um, I teach English, and I also work as a librarian in a community college. And so it was occurring to me that I'm kind of in a middle place where sometimes I see my students as the young adults, that I'm assigning these texts to them. But I also teach a young adult literature themed class, and I teach children's literature, and it's coming up in the fall. And so I'm also kind of preparing teachers a little bit earlier than than we tend to think of. But yeah, so these seem like really great resources. And I didn't know, I love an award list, and I didn't know of this one. And it just seems really great. And I want to read all these books. And this was terrific. Also, I'm out in California. Josefa or Josie, where are you?
Fresno, California.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm in Ventura County in Moore Park.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Down south, right? Southern California.
Yep. We're about 50 miles north of Los Angeles. We're just outside of the San Fernando Valley.
Okay.
Sometimes people know that.
Fantastic question in the chat about, are there past award winners that we love? Josie, do I see you have one in your hands that you want to
they're not past winners, but I wanted to share two of our I think these were on our finalists as well, weren't they? Yep. This one is called, this book is Anti-Racist, and there's actually 20 lessons on how to wake up, take action, and do the work by Tiffany Jewell. And the way I ended up using this book is, I didn't use the whole thing, but there was one lesson in here about intersectionality. And like I said, I teach 5th and 6th graders, although at the beginning I only had 6th and then they added 5th. So I really used it with my 6th graders at the very beginning, talking about intersectionality and what that means, and having them sort of dive into like, what are your multiple identities, like what makes you who you are. And there's like a nice little exercise in here at the very beginning. And it was really great because then I used what they learned there to read Woke. And we use NGSS standards for science, and my partner teacher was teaching, I think at the time he was teaching like the 5 senses, but 6th grade. I'm not the science teacher, so I forget all the time what those standards are. But I know they have to do with sensory receptors. There we go. Okay, it all came back to me. Anyway, well, I thought, oh, sensory receptors kind of sounds like woke, doesn't it? So that's sort of how I connected it. But it was really good because with Woke, it's a young poet's calls to justice, and it's written by Mahogany Brown, Elizabeth Acevedo, and Olivia Gatwood. And there's a foreword by Jason Reynolds. And all their poems are like this one is on ally. This one is on community. So it is very intersectional. Like this one is on empathy. I know there's one about ableism. This one is about equality. So it sort of really touches on if you think about it, also all of our intersections. And again, because like I said, I really wanted to engage them and really make them think. And so I found a video where Mahogany Brown actually read one of the poems in here, and that really, really engaged them. Let me see if I can find it. This one, Teeth Dance with Silver. And this one's about identity. And I mean, come on, 6th graders, like they're right in the middle of that, right? Just trying to figure out who they are. And so this one just really made them dig deep. And after talking about intersectionality, it was perfect. I had them hooked. Even though they thought they weren't poets, they really were, of course. But yeah, this one was great. And the other thing about it is at the very beginning, Jason Reynolds talks about how the kind of communication that he had with his mother. And by the way, I love Jason Reynolds too. I mean, love the guy and all of what he writes and all of what he talks about. But in the beginning, in the foreword, he talks to us about how his mother told him okay, talk back to me, but in a respectful manner. Like, you want to say something to me? Fine, let's have this conversation. And that's one of the things my kids are always complaining about is, well, my mom doesn't listen to me. I'm trying to tell her and she tells me, stop sassing me or stop, this and that. And so it was so good to like listen to what Jason Reynolds was saying about how he communicates with his mother, but in a respectful way. And so it was like, that was something that we went and talked about like throughout the entire time, because again, it's such an identity 6th grade kind of time. But yeah, I don't know, Shanetia, Jackie, do you want to talk about your favorites?
Well, one of my absolute favorites was Fighting Words by Kimberly Brubreaker. If you haven't seen that, young girl who it's a tough book to get through. She and her sister have been sexually abused by her. It's not a stepfather, but a boyfriend that the mother had in the house. And they end up in a foster care situation with the most amazing foster care parent. And the two of them are processing that trauma that they've been through together and how they come through stronger. And just the relationship between the sisters and the relationship with the foster parent is beyond anything I've read before. So I highly recommend that. Something a little more not as intense. One of my other favorites that was on our winter list is Kamala and Maya's Big Idea. And it is a gorgeous picture book about Kamala Harris and her cousin as young children and how they were in an apartment complex that did not have playground equipment. And they decided to advocate for playground equipment. And the adults in their lives keep telling them no, and they keep persisting in all the right ways until they get to the end where they bring the community together to build a playground for all of the children to be able to use. So based on some true events from their lives, really, really well done. And just, again, that empowering women, how to not necessarily hear no in the right ways and continue to advocate for what you know is right. A very fun and engaging picture book for young people.
I just put that book in the chat, and I'll do the woke one too. I was in a session yesterday in the children's lit session, and Dr. Ladd, I have to look, she's at UNLV too. She, I'm not, but anyway, she mentioned the Teachers March, and Teachers March was one of the ones that we talked about last year. And because I teach undergrads and all of my undergrads are pre-service teachers, they were really able to embrace that book and think about it as like, you know, you are, as a teacher, you know, you have a role to advocate for social change and for social justice. And it really helped them say, oh, little old me, I could do something. And so then we talked about all the things that are happening in our local districts. Before they all the teachers wore red on Friday. And that was the way in which they were, oh, thank you, for talking to demand like better salaries and benefits from the school district. So I said, look at all that's happening in our local district. So it's like, again, think of it as a teacher's march. And then they were able to say things. I say, you know, this is why you go to school board meetings. You know, at the end of the day, these are the people who hire you. This is why it's important that you vote for who's going to be on the school board. I was like, I'm not telling you who to vote for, but I want you to be active. So like, we as teachers, we can't be passive. So that really helped them say that I'm not preaching to them. I was like, I'm using the book. And, you know, so they're able to see their role. So that was one that I really liked and that they liked. And Sandra and Rich Wallace, they're the authors, and the research that they do in general, they write a lot of nonfiction books. It's just amazing. They go down to Selma, get into the archives, wear t-shirts that say, hey, I'm looking for whoever. And then people are like, oh yeah, well, if you go to this barbershop, the barbershop owner knows the cousin of who you're looking for. So you have to go through people. So when you think about communities, and just hearing their stories about all the research that they do for this book in particular was just really, really, really cool. So you know that they do a lot of work. And then Charlie Palmer is the illustrator, and his work is getting a lot of buzz, and his aesthetic is just really lovely. So I'll put that on the chat. But that was one that that's been a favorite of mine and my students.
I agree with that. When I read that one to my 6th graders at the beginning of the year, they were like, teacher, do you have more books like this? And I said, what, like, define like this? What do you mean? And they're like, those illustrations are just stunning. I mean, and then as I'd be reading, they'd go, wait, there's one kid that's like, can you read that sentence again? Like, I mean, what 6th graders do that, right? But those are the kinds of books that, you know, if you have them in your classroom, like, or if you don't, you better get them. You got to engage them, right?
We also had as one of our finalists Finish the Fight, which was a book all about focusing on different women in the suffragette movement. And again, we hear about the same women all the time, but this focuses on different women of different diversity backgrounds who really were instrumental in helping women win the right to vote. So to really get students outside of what we traditionally hear in textbooks about the suffragette movement, and how white women very often left out women of color, and how that is just so important for them to know. That book does that component so beautifully, to really bring in different voices and different perspectives in how women won the right to vote. We obviously are pretty passionate about our books. This is a great committee if you ever want to consider being on a book award committee. All of that information too is on the Jane Addams website. Highly encourage you to consider being a part of it because it's a wonderful community. We have a really great time reading and advocating for our books.
Looks like we have 5 minutes left, so
Yeah.
I don't know if
Any
anyone
other
else-
questions for us?
Yeah.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thank you for doing this work and putting it together. I'm wishing that I would have had it 6 months ago because I just sent it to my teachers. I'm like, oh my gosh, for next time around, look at this, let's go dig in and find it. So thank you for sharing it. I'm excited.
We're trying to get the word out more and more about Jane Addams. So again, please feel free to share all the resources with as many people as you're saying, as widely as you can. And we're very grateful to Voices from the Middle, who's publishing the piece, to get more, again, knowledge and awareness of the Jane Addams. We'll be at NCTE this year. We're hoping, we haven't heard officially, but we're hoping to be at NCTE this year. Yeah, we're still waiting. I just jinxed us. Now we won't get selected.
No. The universe says yes.
Yeah, I just got his jinx that we won't be there. We're hoping to be let me try that again. We're hoping to be at NCTE this year. We're really appreciative about Voices from the Middle because so many times we talk to people and they've never heard of the award. So we're really on a mission this year to get the word out about the lovely resources and website and all of the great books that teachers, it's hard, right, to read everything and know what to use with your students. So again, highly recommend you share the website with anyone who's looking for those kinds of books. Thank you all for coming, like wherever you are on this June 11th day of your summer. Thank you very much for being here for children and for your students and all that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm right in between Josefa and Diane. I'm in Bakersfield. So I'm like, oh, hey, we could go get together.
Oh, I saw the CSUB. For some reason, I thought you were from the East Coast, but because I've seen you before at the summit, Alice, and yeah, I'm glad you're kind of local.
Yeah, right down the road. So
Nice.
I know when we find out about NCTE in our last 2
Can
months.
do you have an inside scoop for us, Shanetia? Can you go?
Do not.
LRA came out and said they were meeting face to face, right? If anyone's part of the Literacy Research Association, they decided they're holding their conference, they're going ahead. So I thought NCTE would come behind with a decision at least, but I think they're still trying to decide. I think everything's held up in the process.
Well, do get that NCTE journal, Voices from the Middle.
Yes. And if you come to NCTE, come see us because we have a number of the authors that we've talked about here today that will be on a panel talking about their work and how it really does meet the criteria of the Jane Addams and the empathy component that we're advocating for us to be using with children.
Mm-hmm.
We're super excited. Well, we will be if we get selected. Hold on again. There we go with like Murphy.
We're excited. We're excited.
About the proposal, no matter what. We'll be even more excited if it gets accepted. All right. Everybody, thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, everybody. Y'all been
Lisa, thank you.
Thank you so very much for doing this. This was absolutely wonderful and a tremendous resource. And it's so exciting to hear that you have a proposal in for NCTE, and crossing fingers that you get in and that it's also live.
Yes. Because I
Yeah.
want to travel again. Like, I'm tired of doing this in my house. Like,
So
go
true.
back to my-
I just finished my last day of school yesterday, so I was slightly glad that it was through Zoom this year so that I could be able to attend. But I'm seeing that it is the end of the time. And again, this was phenomenal. And you just packed the chat full of so many resources that we can all walk away and use. So thank you so very much for all of your hard work.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you, Josie. Thanks,
Thank
Jackie.
you.
Thank you,
Lisa,
Shanetia. Thank you, Jackie.
Thanks for getting us involved.
Thank
Oh,
you,
good.
Bird.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
so much.
And
Great
thank you,
day.
Mr. Tech guy.
Have a nice day.
On it there. You too.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. So am I good to sign out?
You are good. I was about to end the meeting.
Okay, thank you so very much.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye.